everybody. I hope this finds you all doing well. And today, on the Desert Viking, I want to go over a big, scary word. What prompted this little video is that as we were doing the Tree of the Desert Valley live stream, one of my brothers in my lodge, he uses the big scary word, whereas I usually do not use the big scary word. I use other words for that word. And as such, that gave a good opportunity to kind of discuss words, what they mean, and how they've been altered and kind of twisted to be what we know of them as today. And that big scary word that I'd like to discuss with you all today is the word occult. O-C-C-U-L-T, occult. Now, I intentionally avoid using that word in conversation outside of mystic orders or circles. And I do that because the word occult is a trigger word for many people. And for many people, that word is synonymous with evil, with darkness. You get the imagery of the boogeyman in the ceremonial robes running out and doing evil things and raising demons and raising the dead and all of these far-fetched Hollywood ideas. But these far-fetched Hollywood ideas stretch back hundreds of years to, the Middle Ages when the word began to be used. And there are reasons for that. There are reasons for that word being literally demonized. So, again, I avoid using the word occult. I use other words like mystic or esoteric because to me, those words mean similar things. They don't exactly mean the same thing, but they mean similar enough things where I just shy away from using the trigger word. And just to kind of give you some background, first on what the words mean, and second, why I think the way I think. So occult, the word occult, simply means hidden. It's hidden knowledge. That's it. It has nothing to do, the definition of the word has nothing to do with demons and devils and raising the dead and all of these other evil things that people think about. It simply means hidden knowledge. Esoteric comes from a Greek word. Esoteric means inward. So an esoteric is trying to search inward for the answers, for knowledge that we already possess. As human beings in possession of the divine spark of God, we already possess the answers to the questions that we ask. We just have to go inward and find those, and we call that gnosis. And contrast that with exoteric, and exoteric is a word that essentially means most of the world, but an exoteric is the visual public view of something. I don't want to get too deep into esoteric versus exoteric in this video because that's a topic of its own that I've touched on before and I may do again. But esoteric is inward. Occult means hidden, where you typically have to go inward. You have to search for that knowledge. And then, mystic is just it's mystery type knowledge. So those terms don't mean the exact same thing, but mean similar enough terms where I use them fluidly. And I avoid using the word occult because occult is a term that will trigger people instantly. Now, where does that triggering come from? We live in a world where knowledge has been demonized. And I think that was intentional. I think it's intentional that to seek out knowledge is something that society demonizes because people don't want you to search out knowledge. They don't want you to know things. There are many examples of people who knew things who ended up not wanting to be alive anymore. There are whole communities of people who were put to the stake because of the things they knew. Now, when I was growing up, I have been a part of we'll call it the esoteric landscape since I was 15 years old. And so that's been over 30 years of studying and working in this stuff. And even as I've spent over 30 years in this going on 35 years in this. In many ways, I'm still just learning new things all the time because it's a very deep rabbit hole that I don't think you ever really master in one lifetime. I don't think that's possible. Others may disagree, and that's fine. But when I first was introduced to the concept of the mystic arts or what have you, it was actually when I was a Catholic. So we were raised Catholic. And when I was about 12 or 13 years old, I began to display gifts of God, is what they call them. So there are different gifts that you can receive from God. There's the one that Hollywood made famous, the stigmata, where you can demonstrate the wounds of Christ out of nowhere. And again, there are different ones of these. The one that they were interested in on me was prophecy. And why they were interested in me on prophecy was because at 12 or 13, I used language that was bigger than what I should have used for my age, and I seemed to know things were going to happen before they would happen, enough where people took notice. Now, let me be the first to say this. I don't think that that's a supernatural divine gift from God. I think that intelligence itself is a gift from God. Yes, that's how I was made. I was made up, and that is one of my strengths, rational thought. But I don't think that what I possess is anything supernatural or divine. For me, what they were calling prophecy was nothing more than me. I've always had the ability to see things in shapes and see how those shapes fit together and see how, based off of how the shapes were fitting together, I can see patterns. And because you can see patterns, you can kind of predict how those patterns are going to lay out in front of you. And so people call that prophecy because you just knew what was going to happen before it happened. Well, that's just because if you're smart enough, you can tell, you could see how someone's train of thought or someone's actions are going to lead to a certain conclusion. And that's why I don't think there's nothing divine about that. But anyhow, we went to Catholic school, and I had demonstrated these abilities. So they wanted to take me in and test me to see if I possessed this gift. So what they do, if they want to examine you, and I know there are lots of jokes about Catholic priests and stuff, we're going to avoid all of that nonsense. They bring you in, and so the priests all lived in this mega mansion. And they would bring me in, I think once a week, and it's been a while, but it's like once a week I had to go in and sit there for like 2 hours and just talk. So we would just talk about all kinds of different things. And they would be interviewing me basically to determine or to come up with a conclusion on if there was anything out of the ordinary with me. And I remember the first real mystic library I had ever encountered was in that mansion. And one day, we had got there and that they weren't ready or whatever, so we were just told to wait. And the room that we did the meeting in was next to this library. So the door was open. I walked in and I just looked around, and and it was huge. And there were a lot of mystic volumes in this Catholic priest's mansion's library. And I asked about that. Because I used to ask a lot of questions. I used to ask why, we pray to like Saint Michael and Gabriel and Raphael, all these archangels, but most of them aren't really touched on in the Bible at all or very minimally. And I was always told to be quiet. In other words, that we don't talk about that I wasn't ready for that or something along that nature. And that always led me to know that there was more to the religious text than just the Holy Bible that we were given, which is a whole other topic. But I asked the priest about what I had seen in there because some of those things in that library were occult. And basically the answer I got back was some things that may seem occult aren't occult if they're being done by the right people. So essentially, if priests are doing it, then it's ordained by God, and therefore it's not occult. But if other people were doing it, then they could be led astray by the devil, and therefore it is occult. And that also that they had to be in possession of knowledge that was a cult to understand the world better and to be able to combat the devil better. That was essentially the answer I got, and I'm paraphrasing from a 37-year-old conversation or however long ago it was. When I was 12 or 13, it's been a while. But that always led me thinking. So it's okay, it's okay if you do it, but not okay if other people do it. And then as we moved on from being Catholics, which the priest came to the conclusion I did not have the gift of prophecy, by the way, that it was just a mix of heavy metal music and D&D, and I had to have all those things taken from me, and my mom burned them all. They didn't like my questions, basically what it boiled down to. But we became Pentecostal when I was in high school. So we went right from Catholic to Pentecostal, which is a very abrupt and severe change in ceremony, we'll just say. One's very subdued and ritualistic, and the other one's very extroverted and the opposite of what I am. But while we were in, the Pentecostal church and whatnot, I would ask the same types of questions and not really get any good answers out of that, other than, again, a cult is bad and seeking knowledge is bad. And I remember out in the front of the church, so it was an Assemblies of God church, and they used to have and you see these every time you drive by them, you'll see like the bulletin board or the lit up board with a message. And the message I remember one day was, free thinkers are the tools of Satan, or something like that. And that has always stuck with me because I find that so backwards and so appalling. But essentially, thinking for yourself is considered wrong. That you should you should just be completely obedient to the church and how the church tells you how you need to think. This is how the church has operated since they were created way back in Roman times. And in fact, if you didn't toe that line, you were killed back then. So when the church first came into being, they had to contend with different sects of Christianity. They had to, the Gnostics were especially grievous to them. They really did not like the Gnostics because the Gnostics had a different version of the Jesus story and of the creation story in general. And so what ended up happening is, towards the end of the Roman Empire, around the 400s or so, most of those religions, the Gnostics and the other religions, they were put down, they were burned, and if you were caught with any of that material, you were executed. And so all that stuff basically disappeared. And you were taught that you will listen to these men. They are the guides of, God has told them that they're supposed to tell you what to do, and people just fell in line with that. And that's how we've operated for like 2,000 years. And thinking and knowledge is bad. And so the word occult, which meant hidden knowledge, became demonized because it is about finding knowledge, and the church does not want you to have that knowledge. Whether you feel that's good or bad, that likely challenges some people. That is how that word got to be demonized. Occult means trying to find hidden knowledge, which means bad, which means it's obviously the devil. Because if it's not in the Bible, that's what most people believe. If it's not in the Bible, it is therefore not from God. And that, I think, is one of the greatest darknesses of humanity's existence in the recent epoch, that we have taken to demonizing rational thought and asking questions and such. So that is what the word occult means, hidden. And esoterics and mystics, we look at the hidden and we ask questions, and we're following a different path that ultimately I think leads to the same place. But I wanted to talk a little bit about that big scary word, because even after we had stopped streaming, when we hung out and talked for a little while, one of the guys stayed behind, who was a master of the lodge at one time. He was raised Pentecostal like I was, and he even said that. He goes, yeah, that word is a trigger word for a lot of people, and it even triggered him. And he's a Freemason, and he's into other things, and he's expanded himself. But even that's hard to get out of that conditioning when you're young, when you're taught that those things are bad. Even years and years and decades later, it'll trigger you. And the word triggers me. It triggers me to always think, go, that's why I don't use it. So if you have any comments on the word, or you want to share anything, please feel free. I know what kind of responses to expect from some people, but yeah, that is what I wanted to discuss today. Just kind of talk about that word and how knowledge has become something that we're supposed to hide from unless we're told explicitly by people we've willingly given our basically minds to and our trust to. So that's all I got today. Everyone stay safe. And we're moving into fall here hopefully soon. So hopefully the weather's going to break and won't be so hot. And I look forward to that very much. Until then, well, it'll probably be summer when you hear from me again. But until next time, we'll talk to you later.